KREM 2 News begins now.
Hello, thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News Week in Review. I'm Tim Pham. In the next half hour, we'll get you caught up on some of the biggest stories in the Inland Northwest this past week.
Well, over the last few months, we have seen a slew of motions and objections lobbed across both sides, all centering on this possible death penalty. And that came down to hours of argument today about why the defense wants death off the table. In less than a year, Bryan Kohberger will face trial in Boise. Still unclear whether he could be put to death if convicted.
Capital cases are a really big deal.
Under Idaho law, a jury must unanimously impose a death sentence after finding at least one aggravating factor exists. Prosecutors are arguing for in this case. Multiple murders happened at once. Those murders were especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. The defendant exhibited utter disregard for human life, and he presents a propensity to kill again. Judge Stephen Hippler has his work cut out. The defense argued against each one Thursday. Attorney Ann Taylor says determining probability of future violence could prove tricky to a jury, mainly because of the word probably in the statute.
Those are hard concepts for a jury.
Standard would be that the jury would have to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that it is probable that the defendant would be likely, or it's probable that they would kill again. I think it's the way that washes out.
I think that's the way it washes out too. And I think it's just a problem with the word probably in there.
Prosecutors took issue with the idea a jury wouldn't be able to understand what's being asked of them.
The court is being asked to start with the presumption that a jury won't be able to follow the law.
But Taylor's request to toss the death penalty aimed at capital punishment in general. She points to the state's failed attempt to execute Thomas Creech by lethal injection early this year. That came down to the inability to find a vein, but she says the state has often struggled to obtain the drugs needed for that method. Idaho also allows death by firing squad, but she argues that hasn't even been set up yet.
To have him sit on death row and say, Idaho's going to figure out how to kill you at some point in the future in a way that isn't cruel and unusual and in violation of your rights, I just don't think that the constitutional protections allow that to happen.
Prosecutors fought back on the claim Idaho has no means to execute someone and say the penalty itself isn't at issue here.
Deciding the method of execution is not deciding the sentence. The sentence is death. The method of execution is just how that's brought about. And
Judge Hippler and prosecutors both brought up the fact, if convicted, the defendant will likely wait decades to die. Decades that could bring about unimagined new methods of execution. Now, Judge Hippler is expected to issue written decisions on the many motions argued this morning. We don't have an exact timeline for when those rulings could happen, but you can bet it'll be soon. Both sides are preparing for an August trial start date. Shannon Mowdy, KREM 2 News.
The first rule of budgeting is that when you're in a hole, stop digging. So we've done that.
Mayor Brown proposed the first draft of the Spokane City budget for 2025 and 26 on Saturday. The $2.5 billion budget has roughly $535 million going towards the general fund, after a projected $25 million deficit was predicted by 2025 and $50 million by 2026. She says the work on the budget to combat the city's deficit involves voluntary retirement incentives, furlough days, and renegotiating IT contracts.
The upshot is that I am presenting a balanced budget for the city of Spokane for the next 2 years.
The mayor is also focusing her budget on the issue of public safety.
Unfortunately, we have seen an increase in fatalities, and we want to take that on.
It's something she says depends on the results of the levied community safety sales tax on this year's ballot.
For the last few years, the city has not been regularly accommodating those long-term, big-picture capital expenditures. So we are attempting to turn that around.
Capital expenditures such as bringing back neighborhood resource officers and replacing equipment for the fire department, she says, is necessary and will help establish a stronger relationship between the community and law enforcement.
Neighborhoods definitely have expressed to us that they like the relationship with the neighborhood resource officer who knows their neighborhood.
Details on the full budget proposal can be found on our website. Connor McAvoy, KREM 2 News.
It was always super special for me to actually go up and thank them. Thank you. And help put the bag and the turkey in their basket that they're donating. And then during the giveaways, you know, people are just beautiful. You know, they would just come up and they'd hug me. And I just, you know, gosh, you know, there's nothing better than that, right?
This past summer, I was stung by more wasps than ever before. I lost my favorite tree to beetle kill. And while that's just me, our mild winters as of late haven't been killing off some of these pests that would typically die in one of our colder years. Whoa. Despite our January cold snap, I spent more time on my bike last winter chasing Mark Hanrahan around Beacon Hill than I did on my skis. There's been a lot of talk of it all summer long, but now it finally seems La Nina conditions are starting to merge and will likely be present by the time winter gets rolling. Colder than normal sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific caused the polar jet stream to dive south over the northwest, bringing colder temperatures and more moisture through the winter months. That same pattern has brought us banner years of snow in the Cascades and northern Rockies in the past. The persistent northwesterly storm track works perfectly with our geography to squeeze out as much snow as possible. And this year likely follows suit. Much unlike what we saw last winter, where we struggled to keep snow on the ground even in the mountains. Places like 4th of July Pass weren't even able to open the cross-country ski trails last winter. It's next to nothing. In Spokane, our average temperature in winter hovers right around freezing, so a drop by a couple of degrees has a huge impact. A lot of our precipitation that might fall as rain would instead fall as snow, bumping our season totals up even more. So expect more snow, expect more of it to stick on the ground, and expect to need those winter tires, and keep the shovel handy. Coeur d'Alene always sees more snow than Spokane, La Nina or not. Boasting some 70 inches annually, the hallmark holiday town on the water will likely spend the next few months a blanketed winter wonderland. It's likely most of the hiking trails will be covered in snow. That same pattern doesn't have much of an impact on central Washington because of the rain shadow of the Cascades, so think small, quick melting storms. Pullman, Moscow, Deer Park, Colville, Sandpoint, and all of you smaller towns, I'm not forgetting you, you'll be battling more snow this year as well. All of this snow goes a long way when it comes to recovering from drought conditions. More than half of the Northwest and almost all of the inland Northwest is facing some sort of drought right now. But it's worth noting, La Ninas don't always deliver. Our most recent two were plagued by a ridge of high pressure in January that we just couldn't shake. It gave us seemingly incessant fog and little to no precipitation. But if we get rid of that, it's a different story. 7 out of 10 La Ninas deliver. 3 of our snowiest winters ever were La Ninas. Nothing is guaranteed, but there's nothing wrong with dreaming. As for me, until the snow flies, I'll be getting ready for a cold and snowy winter. For KREM, I'm meteorologist Jeremy Legoo.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on KREM 2 Plus for your KREM 2 News Weekend Review. It's been a busy week here in the inland Northwest. Let's get you caught up on some of the news you might have missed.
That dash represents all the time that they spent alive on Earth, and now only those who loved them know what that little line is worth. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while.
Sarah Edge believes that life shouldn't be measured by dates, not by birth or death, but rather by what happens in between.
Your dash represents what you've done with your life. It made an positive impact on the world.
She believes in living your dash. In fact, it is a strong family belief, to the point where she and husband Mark Both have small dashes tattooed near their wrists.
It's our family thing to make our dash count and to live our best life.
It is the dash of their brother and son, Eric, that brought us to the Edges' Cheney family home this fall.
He was my sunshine. He just had a light that just would transform any room.
That's unbelievable how good he was.
17-year-old Eric Edge was on summer break, the eve of his senior year at Gonzaga Prep, when he died unexpectedly from complications during a routine surgery. His family determined that Eric's light, his dash, was not done.
When he was 14, I was able to take him with me on a mission trip to Honduras. He actually got to see what people had, what they didn't have.
Wanting to hear Eric's name and for people to remember his heart, the Edges are determined to build wells all over the world in Eric's name.
Sarah had the great idea of, why don't we take all these funds that people are donating and develop a well in a country and it be dedicated in Eric's name. We want to make a positive impact on his behalf.
Fundraising just months after Eric's death, the family raised enough to build their first well and create a roadmap for more.
We don't want to stop with just one or two. We want to keep going and going as long as we can.
We had a beautiful event right here in the chapel on the first day of school to honor Eric.
I feel like almost the whole senior class, that it really opened our eyes to just how we should live our life.
Eric's Gonzaga Prep family is grieving as well.
Suddenly, when he's gone, you realize how, like, all these cool, crazy things that he did, but he was very humble.
But no one is really surprised that Eric's life has inspired great acts of kindness, for that's how the teen chose to live his life, his dash.
I don't think I ever heard an unkind word come from his mouth at all, ever.
He was just an excellent human being, and it's sad that he's gone. And it's really silly in a disappointing way that I feel like I missed out, and I feel like Max is gonna miss out on sharing some of those experiences with Eric.
Eric's friends and his family are encouraging people to say his name, remember his goodness, and maybe even reshift their focus.
I think Eric Edge is an excellent role model for that we can hold up as an example to people of how to be somebody for others, that was living not just for himself and for his own benefit, but for the good of the world.
It doesn't happen without the incredible generosity of the people who live in this community and care for their neighbor. I mean, we have a lot of good, really, really good people who live here.
This is just kind of my way of giving back to the community and to Tom Sherry.
Cooney County Elections Office says they had a total of 97,711 ballots cast for Election Day and also about 7,200 new registrations on Election Day. They say the office will spend the next 10 days canvassing the election and processing registration cards. For Spokane County, the elections auditor says the work continues.
But we do know that we've got roughly 277,000 ballots here in hand, some of which have already been counted, and some are still being processed in the big equipment right behind us.
Dalton says they are waiting on challenge signatures to come back for votes to be counted.
People who have received a signature challenge letter from us that says they need to update their signature, they have until the 25th to get that back to us.
Dalton says the election is not formally over until they certify everything by November 26th. She also says there are still a few tight races like county commissioner and the Superior Court judicial race.
Tonight in this room, Washington State Democrats were celebrating Bob Ferguson, and Ferguson thanked the thousands of supporters and volunteers who helped make victory possible. Now, Ferguson told the crowd his campaign won by building a massive grassroots coalition. He says they traveled across the state to 39 counties and heard people's concerns. And he says those conversations will guide him as governor. Ferguson said, "We will make progress on the most critical issues, from housing affordability to public safety, and from economic development to the ferry system." This has been such a big race in Washington, with voters electing the first new governor in 12 years. Ferguson, who has been the state attorney general since 2013, says he's ready for the job.
As your Attorney General with a fantastic team, we fought for you every single day. We did not pull our punches. And as your governor, I will center you, each and every one of you, red counties, blue counties, Republicans, Democrats, independents. You are top of my mind. I'm thinking of you, will advocate for you, will make Washington even a greater state than it is today. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's go get them.
Ferguson thanked his opponent, Dave Reichert, for a hard-fought campaign. He also thanked his wife, Colleen, and kids, Jack and Katie. He says he will be making an announcement in the coming weeks about building a team to lead Washington State into 2025 and beyond. In Seattle, Natalie Swaby, KREM 2 News.
Well, the state Republican Party held a party here at the Bellevue Hyatt, and they had a lot to celebrate nationally, not as much here in the state of Washington, especially the governor's race. But Dave Reichert, the Republican hopeful, is still not giving up hope. He knows that he's behind in the numbers. He knows Bob Ferguson has declared victory. But Dave Reichert says there are hundreds of thousands of votes to still be counted, and he wants to honor all of those voters who filled out ballots. So he says he won't give up and concede until the last ballot is counted. Something he told his supporters here, he says, "I know a lot of you want to move out of this state if Bob Ferguson is elected governor." Dave Reichert told people they need to stay and fight, win or lose. He says the Republicans need to stay in the state of Washington. For KREM 2 News, Drew Mickelson in Bellevue.
With the dust settling on election night, we decided to go out and talk with community members about how they're feeling about the results.
The divide is something that I really dislike within the states right now, because I've lost friends over this, which sucks, because just the views are so starkly different.
Well, I think it's going to take more than 4 years to clean up the mess, to be very honest, and that's why I think we all have to work together.
While there are differences in how people feel after the election, both of these community members agree the country has to work together to move forward.
So I would hope that we just see, some kind of unionization between all the states and Republicans and Democrats. It's just, we're all, united citizens.
I think we all have to work together if we want to preserve this country.
After a night of heightened tension, it's important to prioritize your mental health, and spaces like Sanctuary Spokane have definitely been seeing the demand for mental help here in the area.
And people never take the time to actually really care for themselves.
Co-owner of Sanctuary Spokane, Alicia Policani, says leading up to election night, Sanctuary saw a higher number of people looking for help, even noting the night of elections and even the day after, they were fully booked until closing.
We weren't all born knowing how to deal with everything. And there's a lot of issues and stressors that are brand new to us, every year.
Policani says if you feel uneasy and need to de-stress, there are some things that you can do at home, like unplug and sit in a dark and quiet room, draw yourself a hot bath, and spend some time outdoors in the sun to boost those serotonin levels. Christian Garza, KREM 2 News.
Thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News Week in Review. For the most current news throughout the weekend, you can watch our latest newscast and weather forecast right here on KREM 2+. Just look for the video in the bottom navigation menu. I'm Tim Pham. Thanks for watching.
Why do you do this?
Just to give back to the community.
From the volunteers that come out to stores to help raise meals, to the folks that generously give of their time to distribute these meals and meals all year round, and that opportunity to connect with one another and to connect with community members who, need some assistance right now, that describes it, yeah.